Hare Krishna. I noticed that some devotees tend to absolutely condemn the idea of feminism. And I find this attitude, first of all, quite dogmatic. And this is the no dogma zone, I'm sorry. And second, I also feel some intellectual dissatisfaction because often the concept is not defined. And perhaps it's not defined because it's not fully understood or understood in its various facets. For instance, are we talking about first wave feminism, second wave, third wave, fourth wave? There are some fundamental differences historically, culturally, psychologically about different stages and forms of feminism. Feminism is not just a one solid block or theory or idea. So, because women are half of the world, half of human society, and of course, all men in some form have to deal with women, and therefore, it's very important to understand the concept of stri dharma, the dharma, the duties, the identity, the proper function of women and men in relation to women. I want to explore this topic a little more. So I will be reading from this book, Did Srila Prabhupada Want Women Diksha Gurus? And I'll be reading from Appendix 2, which is entitled, What Do You Mean by Feminism? By the way, in the notes to the videos, you can find the link. You can download this book for free. What do you mean by feminism? There is a quote at the beginning in the letter from Srila Prabhupada to Guru Das on 26th May 1972. So far, your question regarding women, I have always accepted the service of women without any discrimination. Let's start with the text. Do we assume that by labeling any idea as feminist, we can automatically delegitimize it? In other words, it's enough to just say, oh, this is a feminist idea, or somehow is compatible with some feminist ideas, and therefore has to be dismissed, has to be condemned, has to be erased from our dialogue, from our discussions. Do we believe that by branding any argument as feminist, we can effectively dismiss it? We noticed much muddled thinking around the word feminism. Pursuing a better understanding, we took a look at the standard dictionary definitions of feminism. And here I quote from 3 different dictionaries. From Collins, a doctrine or movement that advocates equal rights for women. From Merriam-Webster's, the theory of the political, economic, and social equality of the sexes. From Ologies and Isms, an attitude favoring the movement to eliminate political, social, and professional discrimination. And then we look at the glossary of the Bhaktivedanta Database folio, the collection of all the teachings of recorded teachings of Srila Prabhupada, and we found this definition. Feminism, the promotion of the rights of females in human society. Now, I don't know the way you think, the way you feel. about this topic. And I will be very interested to hear from you. So please comment with your views, with your questions or protests that you may have, or themes that you like to be analyzed on this channel. Um, but personally, I don't find anything fundamentally wrong or incompatible with God consciousness or with Krishna consciousness in particular, Vaishnavism, Gaudiya Vaishnavism in particular, in these definitions. Let's read another little bit. What to make of the above, all these standard definitions. If by feminism we imply a stance discarding all notions of women's protection, then feminism is an insidious social policy. In other words, it's dangerous. If we say that in society, this human society should not care for protecting women, then it becomes very dangerous. If we define feminism as the rejection of all the standard guidelines and all the traditional teachings on proper interaction between the genders, then surely feminism is an ill-conceived theory, one that should have no place in ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness. At the same time, we wonder, is the idea that women have rights or even equal rights an abominable one? Is it always corrupt and corrupting to suggest that women should not be discriminated against? Is the view of, quote, political, economic, and social equality, unquote, so misguided and evil on any level? We also wonder, are there dangers in the wholesale condemnation of anything connected with the idea of gender equality? Is it wise to believe that some forms of equality should be reserved only for extraordinarily advanced Vaishnavis? In other words, if you're not super spiritually advanced, if you're not uh, extremely realized in transcendental knowledge, then you don't deserve certain aspects of equality. In other words, the question is, should we believe like that? Only super extraordinary women can claim equality, or not? Or is it for everyone? Certainly, Srila Prabhupada did not favor materialistic feminism, and therefore he cannot be considered a feminist in a, we could say, in a contemporary sense of the word. But he did express the equality of all living entities on the spiritual platform. And he spoke about equality of the sexes amongst those performing devotional service. So the question is, how should we distinguish when the sense of equality among the genders comes from the, quote unquote, puffed up concept of womanly life, unquote, which is questionable, and when it comes from, quote unquote, equal vision? Just like the Bhagavad Gita 5:18 says that the sage sees all living entities regardless of the bodies, regardless of the forms they inhabit, in an equal way. Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavyastani Shunichara Swapakasha Pandita Samadarshina. He sees with equipoised attitude because he sees the soul. He sees that the body is a dress, is a temporary situation. It's like, I'm not this blue t-shirt. Tomorrow I'll have another t-shirt or shirt or whatever I will wear. So we cannot just relate and define people by the physical dress they wear at the moment. Equal vision is commendable, and a materialistic, puffed up concept, in other words, something unrealistic, something imaginary, then of course that's not recommended. Here we come to the crux of the issue, in my opinion. Next section in this essay is entitled Feminism in the Three Modes. Three modes of nature, the three gunas described in the Bhagavad Gita. I read, as anything in this world, food, sacrifice, charity, activity, austerity, etc., also the idea of equality between genders can take different flavors according to the gunas, the three influences of material nature. Feminism can take the dark, fanatical, inflexible, and even destructive form of tamoguna, ignorance, or the bodily centered, selfish, utilitarian, and politically correct form of rajoguna, passion. Or it could take the soul centered, philosophical, purified, and unbiased form of sattvaguna. In other words, the subject of the rights and potentiality of women will be colored and filtered by our assumptions and the modes that affect us. And I will stop here for now. I plan to continue reading and commenting. So, in my experience, I find this approach very useful in understanding life in all its expressions. What is the approach? Approach of seeing certain ideas, certain things, objects, ideas, movements, attitudes, according to the three modes of nature. Actually, Krishna trains us quite patiently in the Bhagavad Gita to see the differences between same themes, same items, but in different modes of nature. For instance, charity. Now, instinctively, we may think that charity is always good because it shows it shows generosity, it shows care for others. Done in the mode of ignorance when we give money to very unqualified people who will misuse that money and will self-destruct. Like, for instance, if you give money to a drunkard or a drug addict, you'll only increase his or her misery. So Krishna very systematically teaches us to see things according to these three divisions. Even knowledge. One may think, what knowledge is something neutral. Knowledge is information. So knowledge should be uh, universally accepted. But Krishna says, no, even knowledge is filtered. Knowledge in the sense, what kind of awareness of things, how we define things. So he says, no, there is knowledge in tamoguna, there is knowledge in rajaguna, and there is knowledge in sattvaguna. So we'll start the next video on this topic from this knowledge in the three modes of nature. Hare Krishna. So, as usual, if you like the video, like it, comment. If you like some themes to be discussed, or even if you disagree with something I said, please uh, write your comment. We'll take it as your contribution to the dialogue. And subscribe if you want to hear more about these themes and similar ones. Hare Krishna.